All right, we've had a couple people join us already, so we'll go ahead and dive in and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you
Hi.
so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Hannah Crapeau. I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at Certiport, and we're so happy to have you joining us for our first Certified Academy Business webinar of 2024. Please feel free to drop into the chat and let us know where you're joining us from, what courses you teach. We're really excited to be spending some time learning here together. Now, for those who don't know, this session is being recorded, so we'll make a full recording available to all of our registrants after the presentation is wrapped. With that said, of course, everyone who's attending is on mute, so feel free to drop into the chat if you have questions that you want to add to our panel discussion today. I did want to call attention to the fact that this session is being sponsored by our Project Management Institute Project Management Ready certification program. PMI is the world's leading association for those who consider project, program, or portfolio management their profession. And the PMI Project Management Ready certification familiarizes students and learners with project management concepts and gives them the tools to apply this knowledge in a wide range of career paths. For those interested in learning more about PMI Project Management Ready, after I stop sharing, I'll go ahead and drop a link into the chat so you guys can learn a little bit more. And today we're going to be talking about how to teach project management in your CTE classes. And we're very, very privileged to have one of our certified ambassadors joining us today, Miss Jenny Mohes. So Jenny, I'm not going to read your full bio this time. We've had you on several times. I just wanted to pass the mic over to you, and I'll stop sharing here and see if you can just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you teach.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Mojes, and I am in Florida, more Central Florida, so Orlando, Kissimmee. And I teach the Valencia Graphic Design program in the school district at a STEAM high school. So we teach graphic design to high school students. And it is a CTE course, so career and technology education. And I'm a graphic designer, at heart. And so I've been in this industry now for over 20 something years. My background is really not so much of teaching, but more I worked for Apple for 8 years, and then I went to Microsoft. And during that course of time, I started teaching and I fell in love with mentoring. And then I went into teaching full time. And so it's been a pleasure working with Certiport and, being able to institute different things and do different things with our program.
I love seeing your students in the
I
background.
know my
We got her
students are
right in
still
the
here.
middle of
They're
her
here for
school
like
day.
5 minutes.
No, we're just so happy to see you in action.
Hi,
I think
guys.
it's amazing.
It's
I
in
did want
action right now
to,
while
in
I'm
action.
talking to you. So,
I did want to call attention to the fact, and I think this is super unique and hopefully something that a lot of people on this webinar can relate to, is that you don't teach project management full time. You teach
uh,
graphic design primarily.
correct, correct.
Correct.
But
So
it's
tell me,
incorporated into
right,
what we teach.
right. So tell me why you've decided to teach project management in your classroom.
So project management is one of the leading certification these days. If you are on LinkedIn, if
Mm-hmm.
you are on, any job boards and when I have the kids, my senior class, when they're doing resumes and professional writing and they're looking at different things, one of the reoccurring themes that started coming up was project
Yeah.
management, right? And so if you work, what we did, and I could probably pan it, but I don't want to mess up the recording. But like in our classroom here, what we created 2 years ago was a graphic design agency
Mm,
within the curriculum. So we started building the agency. It's just another classroom within my classroom, and
mhm.
we have vinyl equipment, banner machines, different printers. We're doing large scale printing, and so the kids are able to run an agency from start to finish. So last year was our second year really kind of getting into everything with the agency. So my senior class is the one who really runs the agency.
Mhm.
And if you're in any type of business, it doesn't have to be graphic design or, there is a team of people that needs to do stuff, right?
Mhm.
And they have to manage that workflow process.
Mhm.
And it kind of just dawned on me where it's like, how do we really kind of do this in a quick, can I just get the door real
Yeah.
quick?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Sorry.
No, in the
So
middle of the
we
action. I
are
love it. I love it.
we ended up doing and this was just a pilot test run, right? Because
Mm,
it was the first year that we actually ran the project
yeah.
management. And when I, went over the course, it's everything that we do in the agency already,
Yeah.
but we're also doing project-based work. And I'm a strong believer, maybe, and it's not just because having a teacher mindset and a mentor mindset, but I want the kids to be able to use the certifications that they're getting within my courses.
Mm,
So we teach the Adobe Suite, which is Photoshop, Illustrator,
yep.
InDesign. And one of the things that really, and you and I have talked about this many
Mhm.
times, is being able to teach them how to use the things that they're getting certified in.
Right.
And that's kind of how this brought along the
Mm,
whole institution of projecting project management
yeah.
into it, because now they had structure in the way that they ran the agency. So like we have the creative director, assistant creative director, the graphic designers, the project coordinators, the project managers, who is keeping the flow of the whole process. So we actually worked with your team
Mm,
last year. I It was Katie and a couple other people on the
mhm.
team, and Miss Denny, and she was able to meet with the students when we were doing this. It was our first Tiger Hope Walk
Yeah.
that the kids were doing, and there's a cool video out there on it. You can
Yeah.
see
Let
the
me see
whole
if I can find
process.
that and I'll drop that into the chat.
Yeah, and so that was exciting because now they're getting this real world experience of
Right.
they marketed the social media aspect, the graphic design aspect, and the project management piece. And they were I also teach business, right? Because they're operating a business.
Yeah.
So we do the ESB certifications as well as the design for the light
Hmm.
certifications, plus all the Adobe certifications.
Yeah.
So our seniors really end up with 6 certifications just in my course.
Amazing.
And so it all kind of works together. And I didn't start off with this mindset, right?
Hmm.
I didn't know that this is how it was going to be. But when we started the agency, I thought it was a good structured way to incorporate all
Yeah.
those certifications because they're learning hands on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of in a long way of really explaining how I incorporate graphic
Yeah.
design into project management, because the end of video shows kind of what we do there, but it really helps support the students in really understanding and how to actually execute.
Yeah.
Because my big thing is, if you don't know what you're doing, I don't want to certify you. I want you to understand it. I want you to be able to use it. And I want you to become a world champion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of what the thought process is.
So I wanted to ask then, you've talked a little bit about this, but how do you balance teaching project management in a course that's primarily focused on another subject with graphic design? So how have you balanced the two?
So it was not easy. I went through all of the content,
Mm,
right? And so most of the work that I teach, so like I teach, we have 2 other teachers on, it's the 3 of us. Between the 3 of us, we teach design 1, design 2, design 3,
yeah.
design 4. And we have seniors that want to double block, they can also get design 5. And so the senior team is really the ones who are operate the agency and, have the full team. So anything that's going on, we work through that. And then in the design 3 class and 2 class, really my senior class teaches my junior class because
Mm,
they're going to be the next senior.
hmm.
So the next senior class next year. So they're already incorporated into that class. And so the way that I take chunks of the work. So
Yeah,
business, right? So when I'm teaching them how, okay, we are going to start actually on Monday, we're starting a magazine in my level 3. We're starting a corporate identity package in my design 2 class. So how do you start a corporate identity
yeah,
package? So you have to work with a client. The client has a business, right? So basically, what I did was I looked at the material and incorporated it into, because business can be incorporated into any type
yeah.
of classroom, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of our students today, their age group, I mean, if you are in tuned with what's trending and the TikToks and the Instagram
Yeah.
and the grams is what they call it, right? Like they school me on what, they were just actually using my phone to make Instagram posts because we have a Instagram page for the
Right.
agents. So I give them my phone in class, and usually it's my senior class, but this class wanted to try it, but they make fun of me. And which I'm good. Look at Mohes today. She's just walking around here. She's not doing anything. We're doing all the work. We're doing all the things. So all of that, through my observation and
Hmm.
teaching them the soft skills and being able to do the rigor, I don't care if they make fun of me.
Yeah,
That's what they're responsive to,
yeah,
right? And so now it also grows our program because the other students are seeing how these students are doing and how
yeah,
I am with them. And they're like, oh, they're making fun of Mohes, blah, blah, blah. And, but they're doing all this cool stuff,
yeah,
So not being I don't want to say I'm the cool teacher, but it's being in tune with what the students today want to really
yeah,
get out of their schooling, right?
yeah.
And how do I make them a better human being leaving
Mm,
this school and going on to the next chapter in their life? And how do we make them successful? So being able to find the chunks of materials instead of, I use the geometrics and I use all the
yeah,
tools, like the practice stuff that we
yeah,
do, but I take all that content and drop it into the already work that I'm doing
yeah.
because we all teach some great curriculums, right?
Hmm.
But I think in order to reach students a little bit more today, especially with the way things are, and you have to kind of utilize, and I like to call it like reverse psychology almost,
Hmm.
right? So they don't know what you're doing is using what the tools that they're using,
Uh-huh.
and then you're making them learn from that. And
Yeah,
then they're like, oh, I get it. That makes sense. And it makes sense to them because, again, I'm a big person when it comes to saying, they have to make meaning for themselves,
yeah, yeah,
right? You've heard me say time and time
yeah.
again. And that's kind of how I do it.
Well,
And
I love
it's a
that
lot more
because
than that, but of course, in a nutshell.
well, I love that because it really is the teacher. You are the expert in the classroom. You know the kids that you're working with. So it's being
Right.
able to kind of custom tailor those tools that you have to the interests and kind of the direction of your classroom. So I wanted to build a little bit further on that. You've
Yeah.
talked about geometrics. What are some of the resources that you use then to teach primarily project management in your classroom?
So last year we used the Moore system, and then
Mm,
since it was my first year, that was a little bit interactivity in there. This year I said, well, let's try something different, and we went to the
sure.
conference. There's tons of stuff. So we tried Experience XD this year,
Hmm.
and they had some really cool materials. And then I also, while I was there, because one of the things, and I know Certiport, I had spoken to one of the people who were over in the testing area, and they were talking about how, they made the test more intuitive because
Hmm.
last year, what was happening, it was a little maybe because the test was so new,
Yeah.
it took a couple tries for them
Right.
to really dive into it.
Yeah.
And so now it's this year we already have like 40 passes, which is amazing
Yeah.
because it's the content was easier for us to explain it the way that we incorporated
Yeah.
into the curriculum, plus the way that we actually kind of executed the testing, and we incorporated a little bit more with our testing coordinator this year.
Yeah.
So it's actually been, and it's only January. So I have a strong feeling that we're gonna have some more.
Meet and exceed those goals for this
Yeah.
year, which is incredible. And I know we've talked about this and I dropped the link to that video in the chat, but it's not just about the curriculum, it's not just necessarily about what you're doing in the classroom, but I love that 5K event because it brings project management to life. So tell me what your students kind of walked away with from that experience. What did they learn? What did they take away from that?
So a couple of things that really stood out in our in that particular is that the way that they negotiated with the food
Mm,
trucks, right? Because we get food trucks to come in, and then the food trucks, I listened to them. We had meetings before, then they met with your team, and then we talked through everything. I said, okay, let's go.
yeah.
You know, I said, I know you don't need me, but I'm going to stay for the first phone call and then I'm leaving. Right. So, I mean, I was floored when they were talking to the food trucks. Okay, here's what we need. Here's what, can you provide X, Y, and Z? Can you do
Yeah.
this? Since this is a fundraiser and you guys are school vendors, I made sure that we got them an approved school vendor list.
Uh-huh.
Like, would you guys be willing to give us 20% of your sales back to the thing? And they were negotiating and they were like doing their thing. So that was like the number one, standout initially when
Yeah.
they were making those calls and setting things up, and being able to follow up. So they followed up through email, copied me on it, so I was in the loop with everything.
Uh-huh.
And honestly, if I had people working for me, they probably couldn't have done it better, right? Like if
Amazing.
I was paying someone to do this. So I'm like, like that they were flawless. And then we had two project managers leading the team.
Mhm.
They all went, so they broke out the sessions into project managers, project coordinators, graphic designers. um and then another big thing that stood out was I had some of the junior class work with the seniors last year, because one of the project managers was a junior who was
Mhm.
double blocked in my senior class.
Mm.
But some of the juniors were working. I said, well, you guys are going to take over the agency next year. You guys got to be able to do this.
Yep.
So when they went out to sell tickets during lunch and market, and they had posters, they had all these different things up. One of them, I recorded him and I said, how has this experience been for you? I said, because, I know you're super introverted. He's like, Miss, I cannot tell you how out of my comfort zone I am right
Mhm.
now. Even just doing this video
Yeah.
here with all these people, I'm like, I'm out of my comfort zone, but I need that.
Yeah.
I need for you to push me in that direction. And, that was a conversation. Like, I didn't realize in that moment how introverted he was,
Yeah.
right? So that was another big takeaway because he's a senior this year and he's coming to the competition.
Oh, I love it.
So that was like two big takeaways. And then a couple of our coordinators and social marketers, I want to call them social marketers.
Mhm.
That's what they wanted to call themselves. They were like some of my biggest slackers in my class.
Mm.
Right? They've been with me for 4 years. They're like, she's not gonna fail us in our senior year, right? We can slide by. But lo and behold, they were two of the main ones in that video. They were dancing, they were cheering, they just wanted to be part of something that was
Yeah.
that made them feel important,
Yeah.
and they were able to start something and finish it and execute it. And when they were graduating, and I went to the graduation last year, they said to me, we believe we can do something now from start to finish.
Yeah.
I think that was one thing your class showed us, and you never really gave up on us, right? Which was like, oh my God, the tears started coming,
Yeah.
right? And that was like huge, another takeaway just from that event.
Yeah.
And one of them at the end of this video here, he said, it feels really good when you work hard and you see a big project like this and everything that they've learned in the 4 years come
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And they all got to be closer friends, because that's another big thing in my classes, that we form a community.
Yeah.
And it's not a classroom where someone can just sit and nobody talks to them,
Yeah.
right? Even they might not be friends in other classes or friends outside of class, but it's a community that they form. So being able to be, I think this whole project management has now come full circle, where they do my work, it's project-based work, they're learning about graphic design, they're learning how to run their own business.
Mm-hmm.
And so even Salma Sanchez, our world champion,
Mm-hmm.
from 2022, she started her own business. And she started, I mean, she left here, she's running she makes shirts, she gets the things printed, logos, business cards, you name it, she can probably do it at this
Yeah.
point. And so being able to see them make those steps after even just high school while they're getting a post-secondary
Yeah.
education, that's really kind of what the goal kind of was intended for, but now it turned out to be much bigger than that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, you've talked about some of those. I heard someone call soft skills the other day durable skills, which I like so much more because it's something that kind of once you learn it, it sticks with your whole career. So you've talked
Right.
about that confidence and a lot of those kind of durable skills that students are walking away with. I know one of the things that we talked about with project management specifically is that ability to collaborate. Are you seeing your students collaborate more effectively in your
Yes.
classroom?
Yeah. They're able to collaborate, they're able to communicate better instead of
Mm,
being like, hey, like there's times they will joke around and
yeah.
sometimes they drop the little cuss bombs here and there. And I might not be a stickler about it, but there are certain things that they can't say in my classroom.
Yeah.
And so they know what those are, and they respect the boundaries and they respect each other's boundaries. And then when it's time to sit down and put the pedal to the metal, they know what time it is, right? But those down times, I do something called a kumbaya session.
Oh, I love this.
I don't know if if that, but that helps me. Like we sit in a circle,
Yeah.
like maybe in like either in like an area where, or by the agency we have
Yeah.
our our conference room area. So
Hmm.
we sit in a circle and we do kumbaya sessions. This is probably, if not once a week with my seniors, once every 2 weeks, we would do this.
Hmm.
We go around the table, do a round table. What's going on with you? What's going on in your life? Where are things at? How are, you know, because I know where things are academically,
Yeah.
right? Like at this point with the senior group who's running the agency. And so now my junior class, I started kind of doing that a little bit this year just to groove them into, having those, because when they all know each other, they grew
Yeah.
up with each other, they've known each other here for 4 years. And so, I feel fortunate to have a 4-year pathway.
Mm.
Now, 6 years ago when we opened the school, we had to build that from scratch,
Yeah.
right? And to be able to work hard, and those kids worked hard with me to build that. So now when you talk about the communication between
Yeah.
themselves, the communication between me, they know the difference. So of where okay, I can joke around here for a second, and then they know the professional. So being able to also, because, although I don't like it, we have to deal with the politics of,
Yeah.
whether you're in school, whether you're in a corporate setting, whether I work for Apple for 8 years, and so there's certain ways that you work with people, and certain ways that things that you need to look for, and ways that you need to build those relationships
Mm.
in order to really get the outcomes that you need.
Yeah.
And I hope that I can impart some of that knowledge while I'm teaching all these different things with them.
Hmm.
So they understand. And I feel like we as teachers, and we don't give this group, this generation coming up, enough credit, because
Mm.
I learned so much from them,
Hmm.
and the way that they learn things, I'm like, my brain could never wrap around that, like the way you just explained that to
Yeah.
me. Right. And so those are also comments that, for maybe that kid have some kind of insecurity that I'm not good enough, and when I say that to them, and it happens every single day. Like, I can't even phantom this right now. What are you telling me, right? And they're like, "Miss, this is like easy stuff. Like, what are you talking about, right?" But I'm not joking when I say this to them, because the way that their brain thinks is like, sometimes, I would say, like, "How are you even doing this right now?"
Yeah.
Right? And I don't feel like we give them enough credit.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I love those durable skills and that it's translated from so many different opportunities that you create in the classroom, right? It's from the curriculum, it's from these almost extracurricular opportunities to be able to immerse themselves in the community, but also how valuable is that you're basically creating like a team meeting or a corporate boardroom setting. And
Right.
so they learn how to interact at that level, right? And learn how to come prepared to talk about this is where the project is. This is
Mm-hmm.
what I've been doing,
Mm-hmm.
owning kind of their piece of it. But I know one of the things that we talked about, and you've touched a little bit on this, is that you are having these students test multiple times throughout the semester, throughout the year. I
Yeah.
know it can be hard to get students excited to take like another test. So how
Yeah.
do you get your students motivated to not just take the test for the curriculum that you're teaching, but also this project management piece?
So, like, when we started it last year,
Mm,
my seniors from last year, because last year was the first real project management exams, and most of them already had 5 certifications. So they're like, "Oh my God, you're gonna give us another one?" And I'm like, "Oh my God." So I had them actually look up the cost for it. I
uh-huh.
said, "Go look, let's look. I want you guys to look." This was the week we were working on their resumes and stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Go look at some jobs. Let's go on Indeed and let's look at some jobs," right? Because they have to access LinkedIn at home, because it's part of my criteria for them to create a professional LinkedIn resume,
Right.
online, and then I can tag them in jobs and different things. So part of the exercise, but they have to do the LinkedIn at home, because for some weird reason, we can't access it here. No
Hmm.
social media on campus.
Yeah.
So they started looking, and they were like, "Oh, this is well, this looks like it's expensive." So I'm like, yes. So they were like, they looked it up. They're like, "Well, it looks like if you get the materials and you get the test, it looks like it's over $3,000." They're like, "Oh, okay." Right. So I'm like, "Okay, that sounds about right." I said, "Make sure you're looking up the right thing." So they
Yeah.
looked at it, we looked at it, and then they were like, "Okay, we'll try it."
Yeah.
Right. I said, "If you add everything up at this point, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, ESB, and Design for Delight," because I believe when they do those two,
Yeah,
they
they
get a third
master in
certificate,
entrepreneurship.
which is the
Right.
master.
Right.
So when they added all of it up, I said, "Well, this is over like $10,000 that's going to be on your resume." Right?
Yeah.
and you guys know how to use this stuff.
Mm.
It's not like you're not like every other student on campus. You know how to use Photoshop. You know, you have these skills. And even if you didn't want to go work for the man, it's like, well, we don't want to work for the man, like we want to do our own thing. I
Yep.
said, well, you are in video production. You're in my class. You can make your own videos. There's so much influencers out there these days. What are you
Yeah.
passionate about? So, when they started thinking in that mindset,
Mm.
right? They took the test and all of them failed it.
That's kind of the punchline that you're hoping for, is
And
it?
I was like, okay. So I took it the day before. So I or the day after or something. And I also failed. That was my
Yeah.
first time failing at any certification we've ever done. So now I had to take a really hard look, and I realized it really wasn't the students, or it wasn't me, or what wasn't what we were doing. It was just the way that that test was built because
Yeah.
it's so new.
Yeah.
And but we managed to pass it on the second try,
Amazing.
and they did pretty good, and we were fine. But as far as the motivation go, I think really helping them understand how it can help them,
Yeah.
not only just managing school, managing a job. If you go to a job and you start learning that job and you start understanding how the way things are, you might not be the strongest designer, or you might not be, but you understand how to run a project. You
Yeah.
can easily step into that project coordinator job. Or let's say you're working at Starbucks
Yeah.
because it's down the street from the college, right? Starbucks is a pretty busy store, right? Even if, let's say, Starbucks is paying for your tuition. Oh, Starbucks pays for tuition too, right? If you're working, all those corporations, even if you go to Publix, the grocery store
Yeah.
here, there is so many ways and avenues that you can use this, even if you're not going into working as an initial graphic designer,
Yeah.
right? So those are ways, that you can motivate your students, because again, it all comes down to them. They're all about, what is it for me?
Yeah.
Right? What's this in for me? So this again, you guys might be saying, well, why does she have kumbaya sessions?
Yeah.
Kumbaya sessions are important because you need to get to know them.
Yeah.
You need to get to know who's sitting in your classroom. So when you are speaking to them, you speak from that perspective
Mm.
without calling out this person or calling out that person. You
Yeah.
speak from that perspective. Well, this is going to help you, and this is how it's going to help you.
Yeah.
And then I know I'm talking to Yusuf,
Yeah.
right? Like I know he's listening to me.
Yeah.
He might not want to be listening to me, but I know he's hearing me,
Yeah.
right? And so the things that I talk about, sometimes I hit on every single person with something that I might say, and and that motivates them
Yeah.
because they know I'm talking to them
Yeah.
in a roundabout
Yeah.
way, right? And then they go on their way and they become successful. I just actually had a student, and we worked with him because he's planning on taking over his dad's business.
Mm.
And so he ended up, we got him dual enrolled over at the OTEC, you know,
Mhm.
um, the tech school that we have,
Yeah.
associated. And so they do HVAC certifications. So I spoke with them, spoke with his counselor with him, because we've had him for 4 years. I said, if you're planning on taking over your dad's business, and his younger brother is with me, he's coming to the competition. But his younger brother also works in the business. So it's a whole family, and it's an HVAC business. We live in Florida. It might be cold today, but normally it's like 80, 90 degrees,
Yeah.
right? So I said to him, I said, well, why don't we work on your business certification? Because you're going to do this,
Yep.
and do the project management certification.
Hmm.
Let's get you dual enrolled at OTEC. So you can come out of my class by January, go there for the next 6 months, and by that time you'll have your license in HVAC, right? Because he's already been working and you have to work. I did this with another student and he did all the research. This is how I know about the HVAC
Yeah.
thing. You have to work 3 years with a company
Mm.
before you can apply for your license for your own business.
Yeah.
But he's already working with his dad for this amount of years. So he already has the experience. Now it's just to get his own license, and it's $5,500. It's
Wow.
going to be free. So that was our plan when he started in August. And he comes and he checks in on me because he comes to school at like for 1 or 2 classes, then he goes there. So he'll come and check. I miss you, but we gotta do what we gotta do. And I'm like, that's right. Gonna make that money and taking over dad's business, right? So that was what knowing that information was
Yeah.
valuable to him, right? And we were able to do that for him and be able to, navigate the counseling, navigate getting in the dual enrollment, doing all that stuff. I mean, he's been in the program, he's never gonna use graphic design.
Yeah.
However, he made a new logo for his dad's business. He knows how to market the business. So
Hmm.
he's still gonna use graphic design.
Yeah.
Although he's like, I'm never gonna use this, right? But I mean, the logo was amazing. So
Yeah.
he basically rebranded dad's business, knows how to, he did like a whole branding package in quarter 1 for it. And then he did the certification last quarter. And then we're good. We're set to go run a business.
Well, I love that motivation means to you, and I think this is the same for a lot of teachers, getting to know what your students are interested in, right? You
Right.
can't just motivate them to take another test. It's not just hype and rah-rah for one day. It's if you know what's going on underneath and what they really want to do, then it makes it easy to get them excited about learning new skills because you can transition it effectively into a career that they're interested in. But
Right.
I know that that transitions often into kind of the nitty-gritty of, okay, how do I plan for my classroom for when these students are going to take the test? So for every student, of course, it's going to be different. When do you decide to give them not just the Adobe certifications, but the project management
Mhm.
certification?
So we plan on, like, I do an assessment when we get back from the new year in quarter
Hmm.
1, so August. And we do the assessment. I analyze from my senior class all the way down who does, who has what. So from like, for example, when we start
where they're talking to each other, checking patients, and part of that customer service, something like that. Again, a lot of you know me. My background is medical, so I'm going to give you a lot of medical
hold on.
examples. Okay, just 1 second. And then
I might have to just not do this. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
So we have plan. So basically in the state of Florida, we have to bundle Adobe
Yeah.
certifications, right? So Photoshop or Illustrator, Photoshop or Premiere, the way that it's actually in you guys' pathway. So, but they kind of changed that. So from design 1 to design 2, those students, if they didn't finish or pass Photoshop or Illustrator,
Hmm.
we figure out that situation with our
Sure.
design 2 kids. Then my design 3 kids, I run a roster, what they have, what they don't have. Then design 4, same thing. Because the goal for design 4 and 5 is to make sure they have all 6 that I do in my class.
Right.
And then when I meet with our team, so we have 14 teachers, 13 CTE programs. So we have the medical programs, which I also proctor those students,
Hmm.
as you have the National Health Association,
Yep.
they do EKG, they do, the phlebotomists,
Yeah.
then we have the business class who solely does ESB. We have video production. He does
Hmm.
Premiere and Photoshop. Then we have the audio production, which he teaches them to run their own audio lighting business. So he also does business. And culinary. We have our cybersecurity program, which is also through Certiport, all the networking, everything there. Then we have our gaming and simulation, and she teaches AP Science. We also, that's Unity through Certiport. And, so we sit down as a team and we plan how we're gonna, because between our programs, our school has 3,000 students.
Wow.
So between us, enrolled in the CTE programs are approximately 2,300 kids
Wow.
between the 14 of us.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really hard in the past to answer that question,
Yeah.
because it all kind of stemmed from me leading that department, right? So I enlisted this year. We brought in our testing coordinator for the school. And she and I are really good. Like, I've known her since we started here. She was our avid coordinator,
Mm-hmm.
but she took over testing. But this year, I'm like, we are all over the place. We're all proctoring each other's kids.
Yeah.
You know, so this was like in the end of quarter 1. So I told the team, because last year we struggled with this
Mm-hmm.
and our numbers kind of took a dip for it. And I told the team this year, we need to start early and
Yeah.
we need to plan around state testing,
Yeah.
right? Which we tried in the past, but sometimes that's tough, right? So we started testing at the end of quarter 1 this
Oh,
year.
so super early then. Yeah.
So the kids were already on a plan in August. I already had signatures because I have them write their names and sign that this is something that they're committed to doing,
Yeah.
right? For each software, each certification that I have.
Yeah.
And they are committed. Every teacher does it a little bit differently. So we started going into like the beginning of quarter 2, so which is like October, the end of September going into October. um and that was our first big round of testing. And then now, like, in between projects and doing different project-based work, and then still like maybe having them, because I don't want to have them practicing and in the training stuff every single day,
Yeah.
because they get bored out of their minds.
Mm-hmm.
So we maybe twice a week. I
Yeah.
would say, okay, you learn this. This is what you're doing in the project. Now I want you to go and look at the practice test. And then I also did a new thing this year with ESB and with project management, because I had them do a learning style survey. So
Mm.
a lot of our students are either, auditory, kinetic, visual
Mm-hmm.
learners, right? Most of them were visual. I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, if you're anything like me, when I write something down, I tend to remember it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you go into geometrics, they, I said, let's do training mode first, because training mode, you have the steps, you have the answers. I
Yeah.
want you to write down, not for Adobe, this is solely for the project management, ESB, and design for the light students who are taking those exams.
Right.
And I had them make a study sheet. And that is how we were a little bit more successful this year,
Oh, yeah.
because they made a study sheet, they remembered it. And when I put them in the testing mode in geometrics, the timer was there. So now they're getting time.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have time to look at the study sheet. I need you to remember what you wrote,
Yeah.
because you wrote it. It's a visual thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then Kayla, my next design teacher, she also created some Quizlets. She creates Quizlets for Photoshop,
Yeah.
Illustrator, and she did one for me for ESB, which actually helped as well. So we kind of use some different learning tools
Mm-hmm.
based on the learning styles
Yeah.
and the individual learning styles. Because remember that what's the thing called we did a couple weeks ago, the podcast we did a
Right.
couple weeks ago
Yeah.
with different types of learners in your
Yeah.
classroom. And I have a student on an IEP plan, 504 plan,
Yeah.
they're on and I knew that he was capable of taking this test.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things where he He took it back in like October. He scored a 500, but he was outright, I am not taking a test. I don't want to do it. You can't force me. I'm not doing the practice. But he was here. I said, you're going
Yeah.
to take the test.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, fine, right? And he's a new student to me because he's in my design two class. And so I'm giving you this example. When I saw the score, it told me a whole lot about this kid. His
Yeah.
score was over 500. Didn't study, didn't look at the material, nothing, right? And this was ESB. ESB
Yeah.
is not an easy exam.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, you scored 500 without effort, right? So Friday, my test was the first 2 weeks we came back here, and this is now quarter three.
Yeah.
I said, because I want the next few weeks here to be clear for us to do project work and, you know, really start prepping them for the competitions and
Yeah.
things like that. So he didn't show up on Friday. I had a conversation with him. Still didn't study last week. He's like, I don't want to take it again. I said, well, you have 6 licenses. I just paid for this for you back in October. You have 3 chances. You're gonna take it. I said, well, let's negotiate. How about if you do the study for me and you maybe do my one project, you know, we can negotiate and we can see what else you want to do in my class. But if you really take this test, we could negotiate an A by the time spring break rolls around.
Mm.
He's like, oh, well, that sounds good. That'll, I said, okay, well, we can negotiate when that time comes. So he didn't show up on Friday, but he didn't know I was testing yesterday. Right? So, and it was during his class period. I said, well, you're here. Let's do it. Hannah, his score was almost 760 on
Oh
that.
my gosh.
Not one day did he pick up that thing and studied it. So when we talk about someone on an IEP and or a 504,
Yeah.
their brain works differently. The
Yeah.
conversations are different, right? He is a very smart, high functioning kid
Yeah.
who is just, you know, you just need to understand. So now I fully understand it because I said negotiation works with him.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding, he understands clearly what I'm saying. He just doesn't want to physically do things,
Yeah.
right? And or have to study or have to
Yeah.
think twice. But his brain to wrap around that information,
He's
you
ready for
know,
it. Yeah.
it was just there. So those are some, that's kind of what we did. And so our design one classes also tested by the end of October. The two teachers there, between them, they have about 200 students that passed Photoshop.
Mm.
So now this quarter and our next big testing with them would probably be in March. Before we go on spring break, they're going to test for Illustrator. And all those kids are going to be ready and pass. So we'll have like
Yeah.
200 passes, basically 200 passes each on Photoshop and Illustrator. So that's 400 certifications
Yeah.
just between those two teachers. So I think our strategy this year and the testing coordinator being able to help support become a pro and the testing information to the teachers. She's able to make passes for me yesterday. I mean, that was such a big stress off of my plate.
Yeah.
I just sent her the names and the IDs of the kids that I'm them. Was once the testing was done, send the attendance to get fixed.
Yeah.
And we, you know, because of the classes that they were missing,
Oh, there we go. I think I lost
Oh,
you for a second there. There
yeah,
we go.
I think
That's
we
much
did.
better. No, we're good. We're good. Okay. Well, I wanted to just close things out. Thank you so much for all of the advice that you've shared. I wanted to just ask one final question for all of our teachers who are here, maybe just dabbling into project management. What advice would you share with them about how to teach project management in the classroom?
I think I'm losing you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So just to close things out, what advice would you share? What would be like a couple pieces of advice you would share with those who are new to teaching project management but are excited to kind of embed it into their CTE class?
I think one of the big things is find a way, or whatever course that you're teaching, just break the information out into chunks,
Yeah.
right? And incorporate it that way into the curriculum, where so it's not like an entirely, because it can be overwhelming,
Hmm.
and I get that. I did it last year, and but I had to pivot and find ways to navigate. And so those, but it's also equally important to know it's just easier that way on you as well. And
Hmm.
it's easier for the kids to understand. And this is, tie it to experiences that you've had, because most CTE teachers, we also work out in the field, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm still a graphic designer. I still
Hmm.
do it into whatever the courses that you're doing, whether find a way to tie it together.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so, so much, Jenny, for sharing all of your insights and for everything that you've shared experience-wise with us. We really appreciate it. Before we close out, I just wanted to give a couple of quick announcements. First is that as part of our Certified Academy Business program, we do offer a boot camp option. So for teachers who are interested in testing out the certification or any of the curriculum resources that Jenny has mentioned on the webinar today, you can do that. By upgrading your experience. So you have more information on the blog, and I just dropped the link to that into the chat. The second announcement is that this program is a great build up to our annual Certified Educators Conference, which I believe we've mentioned briefly here today. This year, 2024, it will be happening in Orlando, Florida, June 17th through the 19th. And Jenny will definitely be there. We hope to see everyone else there as well. So if you're looking to enhance the experience or maybe expand this conversation and be able to meet with some of your fellow CTE teachers in person, we definitely recommend registering and joining us in Florida this summer. So I'll drop the link to that here in the chat as well. Third and final announcement is that next week, or I shouldn't say next week, in 2 weeks, we'll be hosting another panel discussion about embedding communication teaching into your curriculum. We know that this conversation, so project management and then also communication, those aren't always classes where you have the option to teach a whole semester just dedicated to that subject. So we want to give you tools and resources to find ways to really inject these moments of new teaching into your existing courses. So we really hope that you join us for that. Just keep an eye on your inbox for those additional details. As always, thank you so much for spending your time with us. We really look forward to seeing you all here in a couple weeks. And Jenny, again, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing all of your
you.
insights. We really appreciate you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon. We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.